Peace, everybody. Peace, everybody. Peace, everybody. Welcome again to Changing Life on the Spectrum. And I'm Brother James.
And I'm Nicole.
And we have a special guest with us today, Miss Nikki Stokes, who's going to be conversating with us today on a lot of different subjects, a lot of different topics, because she's a woman doing a lot of things, being very blessed at the moment. And so at this time, we'll go ahead and let her tell you about herself. So, Sister Nikki, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening. I am Nikki Stokes. You guys just put me on the spot. Like, talk about yourself. I am, first of all, I am a mother, which is one of the things I'm very, very proud of. I have a 23-year-old son named Nicholas. I have an 18-year-old son named Roman. They are pretty much the bulk of who I am and why I do all the things that I do. I'm an artist. I'm a fiber artist. I crochet and I knit. I make artwork. Pretty much, if you can make it with yarn, I can make it. Professionally, I used to be a dispatcher for Baltimore City Fire Department. I did that job for about 14 years. Before that, I was a dispatcher of Baltimore City Police Department. I am now the Resource Center Coordinator for Pathfinders for Autism. It's an amazing Maryland nonprofit group that does all types of amazing things for the community. We have staff members that do training for law enforcement, EMS. We've trained FBI, CIA, sheriff's departments. I did training for Raven Stadium last year. I think it was like 600 staff members about Autism 101, how to interact with individuals on the spectrum. I'm a resource coordinator. I'm working on a book, so I guess I'm an author. So I do a lot of things, but the majority of what I try to do is just love on people, and these gifts that I have, just give them back and help as many people as I can. Roman was diagnosed when he was 3, so I've been kind of learning as I go and taking notes and giving those notes back to the community the best way that I can. I'm a Reiki practitioner.
Yay!
I do so much. I leave stuff out. I'm like, oh yeah, I do that too. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me and who
well,
I am.
Speaking of that, how did you deal with having your son diagnosed? Like, when you first got him diagnosed, how did you, first of all, what made you decide to do so? And then second of all, how did you deal with the diagnosis once you got it?
So I knew early. Roman, those milestones, he didn't hit them the same way that his brother did. And I also had the benefit of working with a lot of autistic students when I was a resource coordinator, youth program leader at the St. Ambrose Outreach Center in Park Heights. So literally, while I was pregnant with Nicholas, I was a program leader. And so I always ended up with the group of rambunctious little boys that nobody could get to do anything. And, everybody's just like, oh, put them in Miss Nikki's group. And so, a lot of the students that I work with, looking back now on what I know, they were on the spectrum. And so when Roman, he had started talking and then he lost words. He wasn't walking as soon as his brother was. So initially it was, let's go have a speech evaluation. But just my experience with working with children, I knew something wasn't right, because he wasn't hitting those milestones. And I've always been like the proactive parent. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to wait and see what happened. It's like, okay, well, this is what we're dealing with, so let's figure out how how to navigate and deal with it.
So once you found out, like, what was the first thoughts going through your head? Especially since you said that you actually had already had some experience anyway. What was the first thing that went through your mind?
I think there was a brief process of, I don't want to say grief, because it wasn't really grief. For me, I'm very much let me get focused and figure out what I have to do. And so I'm just one of those parents, whereas something I'll give up on for myself, like for my sons, is all right, strap up these boots, we're gonna cry later and we'll figure it out. So for me, I was very intentional about trying to make this process as easy for him as I could, and just making sure that he had everything that he could possibly need to be successful. So I went straight into like action. All right, let me read up on this. Let me research this. Let me ask this person. It was a lot of research for me, and I think that I dealt with the other part that most parents hit initially, like, that disbelief and the sadness and the mourning part. I think I went through that when he got older. But when he was like 2 turning 3, I was like, all right, mom, let's figure this out.
Wow. Yeah, we can definitely understand where you're coming from on that, because you do have to kind of kick it into gear and just, keep it moving and get going and help them to live the best life they can live, like you said.
Absolutely.
How did you go about putting your team together? A lot of times the recommendation is, you can't do this alone. You need a village, you need a team. So how did you go about putting your team together, to help you along this journey with Rome?
I think because I have a very close knit family. I have 4 brothers. We're a blended family, and so it's always kind of been like family over everything. So my family's very loving, very understanding, and I think Roman's dad and I really set that precedence of, this is our son. He's only going to be in spaces where he is loved and accepted for who he is. And so, we had that. And I think that it was just kind of like us against the world. And so it was like, if he can't go, we're not going. Which can be difficult. And so, initially it was just us. But what I found in my experience was, the more we got involved with like school and things like that, the educators and the providers that we had, once they saw how we were with Roman, it was like, well, how can we help? And I also think that when they saw just like how intentional and how like we paid attention to everything and we were always at every meeting, it was like, okay, we want to help these parents because they're involved and they care. And, if you have a problem that's affecting another child, please let me know and I'll call, just to make their lives easier. So, it was a journey, and a lot of it, I always say, like, it was God engineering, because like Roman's IEP coordinator, he had from the time that he was 3 up until now, whereas he's on the waiver, and that person actually switched positions so that when Roman shifted to a new school, Roman still had the same team.
Wow.
Which is unheard of, I think. But it was just, we were just so very focused on making sure he was good, and in making sure that he was good. We would be the parents to make sure his classmates were good. So people just jumped on board. I really can't even, I don't even think I can completely take credit for creating a team. I just think our presence and how we were with him made people want to help. And so again, I say it all the time. I'm like, God just had her hand in things, and it just always connected and worked, and we just had these amazing people around us.
Wow, That's definitely a blessing right there. Definitely a blessing right there. Because that was one of the things that we said in our first episode, is that you have to put a tribe together around you and be careful who you pick and make sure you pick strong people. But it seems like everybody just kind of gravitated towards you. You kind of pulled them in with your diligence with Roman.
That and Roman's like that. Roman has this gravitational pull that people remember him. They remember his smile. Like I can run into teachers he had when he was 4, and they're like, "Aren't you Roman's mom?" Like he's that kid that you don't forget. Like his personality is amazing. His smile, he affects people that way. And so, I think a lot of that is just him and who he is as a person. People they connect with him and they love him. So
That's great.
Definitely a blessing.
Yes.
Speaking of Roman, were there any special issues that you had with Roman that you had to figure out how to deal with and find resources for?
So Roman has asthma. He has seasonal allergies, and then he is allergic to something in the environment that constantly makes his body feel like it's in a state of allergic reaction, which caused him to have like cyclic vomiting, where he would just like vomit out of nowhere, just like projectile vomit.
Wow.
He had severe sensory issues. He developed epilepsy. He's non-speaking, so we had to rely on like sign language and an iPad for communication. You name it. It was a lot. So, between puberty and regular health issues to his food sensitivities and being texture sensitive, he would only eat certain things. So it was tricky trying to figure out, how to get vegetables, because he had a carb heavy diet, which a carb heavy diet and no vegetables, then you have digestive issues. And so
Right.
it was all these things that we kind of had to figure out and get really creative with. I think the most trying of it was dealing with his epilepsy and his self-injurious behaviors, because he just kept getting bigger. And so, dealing with that when he's 3 versus 15, taller than me and really, really strong, it's a complete difference. So I definitely think like the most challenging, if I had to name like 2 of the most challenging, it was dealing with his asthma, because we had to be able to communicate in a way where like he couldn't breathe. Like we had to be able to make sure he could communicate that he needed help, which he was great at, because he would sign help and he knew how to work his nebulizer. And there were nights we would wake up and we would hear, we'd be like, okay. That, and then the self-injury stuff, when he was sensory seeking. So he was running into things, he was running into objects, running into me, seeking pressure, and his dad would have to restrain him and hold him tightly. So I think those are probably the 2 most taxing issues we had to deal with.
Wow. Ooh, that sounds like a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
Definitely a lot.
Definitely sounds like a lot going on. I just want to switch gears for a quick second. Now, you mentioned that you were a dispatcher, and did you also say you work with the police?
Yes, I was a dispatcher for the police department as well as the fire department.
Okay.
So
in the present environment, especially us as Black and brown people, what kind of guidance would you give us on how to be proactive with the first responders and our children on the spectrum?
So I would say the key is, number 1, being proactive. I was very adamant that I didn't want the first interaction with Roman to be when he was on 100, when his processing was down, where he wasn't going to be receptive to them. When he's engaging in self-injurious behaviors, I did not want that to be the first interaction with them. And I think a lot of times I mean, the reality is nobody wants to talk to the police. It is what it is. Like, no, nobody really wants to deal with the police until they have to. Nobody really likes police officers until we need them. That, I mean,
Right.
this is the truth. And
Right.
so I was very proactive in introducing the officers that worked within our neighborhood to Roman. So I called 311 one day and was just like, "Can you send an officer to my house? Hey, this is Roman. He lives here. He's non-speaking. He usually has his iPad. Sometimes he might get out of the house. This is what you're going to look at." Because I was a dispatcher, like I knew the dispatchers that worked my area. So if you get a call for this address, this kid's missing or something, it's probably mine. You know what I mean? Like, this is what you have to do. And just being familiar, because when people know it helps. Obviously safety issues, you might not trust all your neighbors, but figure out who you can trust and let them know, hey, this is my child. They eloped. If they get out, call me, find me. But when you make your community aware, it's helpful because everybody has to keep a watchful eye out. Another thing I did was, whenever I called, I would say that Roman was having a seizure, because EMS officers, and I know people are probably like, why would you say that? But they're used to people having seizures being combative.
Okay.
You have to be very careful about what you say when you call, just because of the reality is the way 911 system is set up for coding and things like that. There aren't always they're catch-alls. So sometimes, depending on how you say it, or let's just say it's a neighbor that sees Roman and I outside and he might be having a meltdown and he's hitting himself, they don't know what that is. They're going to call the police and say, okay, there's an assault going on, or something like that. So a lot of times you're getting third party people that may not understand what's happening calling, which is where, communicating with the people in your neighborhood will help, because when they see it, it's kind of like, well, how can I help? And they know maybe what it's not in that situation. But I think, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but to go back to the question, initially, that's what I would do. I would call and I said, because I work for Baltimore City, but I lived in Baltimore County for a period of time. And so when I called, I would say, my son's having a seizure. And so they would send the medics. And when the medics got there, I would stop them in the hallway and be like, hey, my son's autistic. This is what's happening. A lot of times I just needed an extra set of hands to help me. I really didn't need, like, he may not have necessarily needed to be transported, but at that point, he was a danger to himself. He was a danger to me. And I didn't want him to get hurt. So I physically just needed someone to help me make sure he was okay. Like I said, most people are really trying to do a good job. And the problem is, a lot of EMS officers and police officers are not properly trained in how to do those things, but they are the only option for parents sometimes. Like, when people call 911, it's because they don't have anybody else to call. So even if ideally, my child needs a psychiatric bed, and they need to be evaluated, but there's a wait for that bed, 911, that's who you're going to call. So a lot of times, if you give them those tools and say, hey, this is what's happening, and you're able to communicate what's happening, then they're able to help you. But a lot of people just show up, and because they don't have the training, they don't know what they're looking at, they don't know how. You got to help. You got to help where you can. So
Now, I believe that you said that you guys were actually working on helping to train them, right? How is that going? 'Cause that definitely was something that we were concerned about as well. Um, you know how the fire department comes by and they always they check to see if you got a working smoke detector and so on and so forth. So when they came to the house, I asked them, I said, well, we have autistic children. Do you guys know how to deal with that? And their answer was
No.
no. No. I mean, we've had run-ins with situations, but as far as literal training, no, we don't have that. And so I'm definitely very thankful that you guys are working on that, and we would love to work on that too.
So,
But how is that going?
so now,
You're breaking up a little bit. We can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry about that.
I don't know what happened. So, Pathfinders for Autism does training.
Okay.
We do training for law enforcement, EMS, volunteer stations. I say this spiel every single day, and now I'm forgetting it. Medical students, nursing students, healthcare professionals. We do the training. Our trainers have gone to West Virginia to train their police department.
Okay.
We do the training. We're trying to get into Baltimore City to do their training if they would have us.
Yeah.
It's free training.
Yeah.
You don't need a budget. Worst case, maybe, reimbursing mileage, but it's free. Like, we have a training that goes to AA County and does their in-service for their police department. I think like every Monday for like 2 months.
Mm.
We can do it.
Right.
Just let us come do it.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. Exactly.
So if Baltimore City Police Department, Fire Department, you want training, we can get it done.
Yeah.
Mm.
Just real quick,
there's
piggybacking off of what you were saying about making recommendations to parents when dealing with first responders. Do you have any advice for parents and what they may need to tell the school teachers to let the first responders know if there's an emergency at the school? I know that that was something that came up with one of our children. If there's an emergency, the alarms go off, he could freeze. He may not want to cooperate. Do you have any tips for that?
Yes. So we have, and because I work there, I gotta plug it. But it's a resource. This is a resource that, and it's not even just because I work there. When my son was diagnosed, this was the organization that I called for help because I didn't know who else to contact. We have articles, hundreds of them, anything from behaviors to how to handle emergencies. We have like step-by-step dittos and tips that teachers can download about how to get children accustomed to fire drills, some tips and things like that. So definitely creating a routine, social stories, practice for them, and just being aware, knowing that, okay, I have a child in my classroom that may not respond normally when these things happen. I think a lot of it is just being aware, because you might have a child that the alarms go off and then they go hide. So somebody's, somebody's got to be constantly aware and just kind of know what to look for. And it probably sounds like super simple, but just being mindful and being aware a lot of times is the best thing. But the practice, the same things, just seeing how they respond to certain things, knowing where they would be. And then just what I tell parents a lot of times too is create like a little check off. This is my child. Like, this is how they respond to this. They might not, they don't have a concept of, like, with Roman wasn't afraid of anything. So, like, if it was the loud sound, it's not really going to phase him. It may bother him sensory wise, but like when you go outside, you have to hold his hand. So as parents, again, if you are giving people checklists and things to be mindful of that they may not be aware of, that helps. There are a lot of tools that you can find online, as far as like social stories and what I used to do is I would create it was almost like a little booklet. Like, this is Roman. Roman likes this. When he's having meltdowns, this might help him. This will help calm him. ask to have a meeting before you need the meeting. So again, just being proactive and giving people information. So, you know, worst case, if the situation doesn't happen, you don't have to worry about it. But when it does, it's kind of like, okay, now we know, you know, this is what we need to look for. So being proactive, giving information. Sometimes people feel like I'm doing too much. No, the more information, the better, because it helps being proactive, because you don't want to try to think about it in the midst of an emergency.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. That was definitely something that we had did with Nikhil, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely had spoke to his teacher and was, you know, first of all told her that he was autistic, and then we did kind of give her a breakdown. Okay, he does this if he's like that. This if you see him doing this, then try not to worry about it. He's just going through this, and just kind of let him come down, and so on and so forth. So we definitely understand what you're talking about. We did strive to do that. One of the amazing things, though, and not necessarily in a good way, that happened is that in the Kiel school, I was in the front office, and I was saying to them, "Wow, must be pretty good." I mean, McKeel, because according to what they told us, McKeel was the only autistic child in the school. So I was like, "Wow, that must be nice." Because I mean, according to what we understood, the numbers in Maryland were extremely high for autism. But then one of the ladies said, "Well, no, he's just the one that's diagnosed. That's what that is. He's just the only one that got diagnosed." And then they kind of, you know, she kind of gave you that look like, you better understand. You see a lot. There's some lot going on. Your son ain't the only one, but he's just the only one that comes in certified as being an autistic child, a child on the spectrum. And I was just taken aback by that, especially when I spoke to the vice principal. And the crazy thing was, I said, "Do you know that the numbers," and this was, wow, this is definitely, what, 5 years ago? At least 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And I told her, I said, "You do realize that you guys need to get ready." I said, "Don't you know that the numbers are like 1 in 35 here in Maryland of children being diagnosed with autism?" She was like, "No, I did not know that." I was shocked. I was like, "But wait a minute, I got it from the state said it." So the state don't tell y'all? They don't send out information to let you know that you're going to have an influx of children coming through that's going to have these issues, and you are going to be the ones who have to figure out how you're going to deal with it. I was just totally blown. Like, wow, really? I'm a parent and I know, but you're an educator and you don't know. And the state is where I got the information from. So, I mean, I was just really thrown off. It just came to mind, so I just threw it out there. But that's what the school system is facing.
In Maryland, it's 1 in 46. No, I'm sorry, 1 in 43 in Maryland. It's 1 in 36 nationally.
Okay.
So it's 1 in 27 in boys, 1 in 116 in girls.
Okay.
So that's like the new numbers the CDC just put out. But that's a little disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I was just taken aback. Like, they had no clue.
Right.
And just like our first responders.
But even with that, again, that's diagnosed cases of like 8-year-olds.
Right. That's true.
Diagnosed.
Yeah. That's true.
So it's, you know, like you said, again, it's not if, it's just when.
Right.
It's when you have that interaction with a student or someone in the community, because it's gonna happen if it hasn't happened already, and you just don't know it.
Exactly.
But I was just surprised that not only did they not know the information, they were totally unprepared, had no clue what to do at all. And even with Nasir's teaching, you know, we were blessed that she at least wanted to go further. So she decided she wanted to take some what's the classes? ABA classes.
Mhm.
And because she wanted to be able to help the children more.
Right.
Right.
But you would think that would somewhat be standard in the school system, knowing those numbers are so high. Like you said, you're not going to be able to get away from it in school. So you would think that that would be automatic, but no.
Especially for a special education teacher.
Right. Which, you know, we won't even get into all that. That'll take a whole different spin if we try to go that way.
Yeah.
But let's change once again.
Okay.
What about mental health? You said that I'm sorry, what was your title again at Pathfinders?
Resource Center Coordinator.
Okay. And I believe you told me you're the one who's getting a lot of the calls, responding to the calls from the parents.
Yes.
From the mental health perspective, what's going on? Because I'm pretty sure with the lockdowns from COVID and then all the interruptions that came along with it, how are our parents really doing, since you're hearing from a lot of them on a day-to-day basis? How are they doing?
A lot of parents are struggling. The diagnosis alone is difficult to manage.
Right. Absolutely.
A lack of resources is difficult to manage. Financially, it's difficult to manage. Some parents are managing it solo. Some parents don't have a village. Some parents don't even have a partner. On top of trying to navigate and manage the other children that they may have.
Right.
So there's so many different areas that parents need support in. So, you know, mentally, they're exhausted. Parenting itself is difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, so adding in the nuances of, you know, a child that you may not always be able to communicate with, a child that you may not always understand, and they may not always understand you. It's very, very difficult. I know I would not have made it through without my village.
Right.
Just because there were some days I'm just like, I ain't got it. I'm tired. Mentally, physically, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we
so
definitely got that.
yeah, and so I try my best. You know, there are some days I get calls from parents where literally they just need somebody to listen. They just need to vent. Some parents think that it's only them.
Right.
And it brings my heart joy to be able to say it's not just you. I was there. I talked to somebody 20 minutes ago that's there. And when you get off this phone, somebody else is going to call me back today or tomorrow and be there as well. So I definitely recommend therapy, because, you know, I'm not I'm not a licensed practitioner, and I can lend my ear, but sometimes therapy is needed. But it's difficult. It's not an easy journey at all. So parents are struggling. I mean, parents of neurotypical children are struggling as well. So it's just, you know, when you have those added layers of it, it makes the job even more difficult.
Yeah.
Were you about to look like you was about to say something? I didn't interrupt. Okay. Speaking of that, what would you say to our parents out there that are going through different stages of their relationships with significant others? Like, we know that CV-19, we all heard that a lot of people were breaking up, divorce was going up, people were having a hard time dealing with each other, and so on and so forth. Do you have any words of advice for those of us that may be getting ready to go through divorce? And how do you keep things in the proper perspective for the child? Not just yourself, not in your relationship, but I mean for your child on the spectrum. How do you deal with these different relationships, good and bad, to, I guess you would say, the best thing to safeguard them, if you have any advice?
Um, which is interesting, because somebody might be like, why do I want advice from her? Because she divorced. But I think for me, my goal was to make sure that my children were whole, that they were okay, that they had the best version of whatever it was that they had. And so in my situation, I did not feel like I could be the best possible mother to my sons remaining in my marriage. And so for me, it was, in order for me to show up every day and give it my all, these are the things that have to change for me. And with that being said, I did, and I still do, everything that I possibly can to make sure that Roman does not feel, and Nicholas too, Nicholas is older, but to make sure that they don't feel the weight of that. Because our kids don't ask for it. You know what I mean? They didn't, that responsibility shouldn't be on them. So
Right.
it was, how can I make this as painless as possible for him? And so a lot of times that meant, chucking that ego out the door and asking myself, what is best for Roman? You know what? Roman's having a really difficult time being at his dad's house right now. So you know what? My home is open to his dad whenever he wants to see Roman, and Roman's with me. If that means I got to go to work and you and Roman have to stay at my place, then that's fine. Here's the key. You can do it. And so it was just about, how do I make this the best situation for Roman? Roman had, for a period of time, he had adjustment issues. So it was like, all right, he didn't want to go with his dad by himself. So I'm like, hey, you want to see Roman? Come over for dinner. You can have dinner at our place, or you can come watch him here and I'll go out and leave you guys alone. So, as a mom, there have been many times where, I took my personal feelings out of it and, bit the bullet and was like, I really don't feel like doing this right now, but it's going to be good for Roman. And I'm grateful that we were always able to agree when it came to just what was best for Roman. Like, we don't make decisions for him without one another. I don't do anything concerning Roman without having a discussion with his father, without us sitting down and saying, okay, this is what this is looking like. Like, if we have an IEP meeting or any of those things, we convene first and then we get to the meeting. So, it's like, the marriage didn't work, but we've got this parenting thing. Like, you're not getting through us when it comes to him. And so that's what I would encourage parents. Like, you have to figure out how to be a united front for your child. It has to be like us against the rest of the world when it comes to this kid. Because in the long run, they're the ones that benefit from it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have anything you would add? Okay, so what advice would you give? Now we're going to be specific to the ladies this time. What advice would you give to all the mothers out there? How can they be the best woman that they want to be, being in the circumstances of having to take care of a special needs child? Because we still, as you and I, Nicole, was talking about one time, you still have to be in that space of your own mental health. So what advice would you give to the moms? And that's not to single out dads, bros, I'm with you. But for the most part, we know that there's a lot of women that are taking care of their children by themselves. The man is not present. So that's why I'm asking you, you're directing it to them, because I say to Nicole all the time, it's this hard for us.
Mhm.
I can't even imagine what it's like if you're truly a single mom and have to deal with this, especially if you have multiple children on the spectrum. I mean, just multiple children, period. But definitely, if it's like you got 3 children like us, and all 3 are on the spectrum, that's a different ball game, different situation altogether.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them, um, for so that they can be balanced and have to taking care of themselves? Because we all know the general thought or frank mindset of the female is she puts everyone first, especially the children. And a lot of times she'll leave herself out. But we don't want y'all to burn out. You know what I mean? Because we can't get help if everybody burned out. So what um what would you say to that single mom that's dealing with their child on the spectrum?
I would say first, show yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't, it's not a roadmap. It's not an instruction manual. As far as I've gone, so much of this I've winged it and it just worked. You know what I mean? So like you wing it, it worked, write it down. Okay, we know we can do that again. But I think as moms, because even now, you know, I'm grateful for my best friend who tells me all the time, like, what standard are you measuring yourself against? Like, I've even now I'm still hard on myself, and just having another mom say to me, like, sis, who are you trying to be? Who are you comparing yourself against? Like, you have set this impossible standard that nobody can meet, and you're being hard on yourself for not measuring up to this thing that nobody can measure up to. So I say show yourself grace, because we don't have a roadmap. We don't have a roadmap for neurotypical children. So we definitely don't have one for, you know, autistic children, especially when every single one is different. Like,
Right.
there are no identical autistic children. Like, all the success I've had with Roman, somebody else might try my game plan and it's epic fail every single time. You know what I mean? So
Right.
Absolutely.
definitely, like, show yourself grace. Like, when you are loving your children, like, you are doing the best you can with what you have. And when you know better, do better. But constantly beating yourself up, like thinking, okay, I got to do this right. No, you don't. You just got to try. You know what I mean? Just try. So definitely I would say show yourself grace and allow yourself joy. Find something that makes you happy. For me, it was creating. It was, as long as I was making something, I was happy. And I was adamant that I was not going to give that up. That was the thing that I kept for myself. And as moms, like you said, we sacrifice, we let it all go for the kids. And you have to have something that makes you happy. Like, besides them, I love my sons to death, but it's like you have to find something fulfilling. Like, it could be a book club, it could be writing, it could be cooking, like, it could be anything. You have to figure out, you know, what that thing is that brings you joy, and keep it for yourself and hold on to it. And, you know, if life gets hectic and you can't get to it today, be intentional about finding that space or that thing that brings you joy. Because if, you know what I mean, if you don't, if you can't not have something that you're joyous about. You can't have not have something that's gonna just make you happy and make you smile and pour into it, because you have to save something for yourself. You have to, because you can't, you know, like we said, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like,
Right.
something is better than nothing. It might not be, you know, a trip to the south of France, but we could pretend in the bathtub. Like, we can do something. But you have to find something that brings you joy and hold on to it, and not feel guilty about it, not feel bad about it, and just have that thing for yourself.
Do you have anything to add, Mom?
No, I think she hit the nail right on the head.
Okay.
Just need you to excuse me for a second.
Okay. Wow, that's very nicely put, and definitely for the ladies out there, that definitely is a good thing. But men, do the same. Same thing applies to you. If you are one of those who steps up and is in the picture, don't run yourself into the ground. Also, find your joy as well. And then definitely try to find joy with each other as much as you can if you to keep your relationship going, because definitely these are trying times, period. But definitely when you have an autistic child or two or three in the mix, then it definitely becomes trying on you as individuals as well as your marriage. So definitely
I
very
tell
good
people all the time, teamwork makes the dream work. Why? You know, and it's a lot of, I get it. But if you have a parent that wants to help, why are you not accepting help? Like, why would we do that? Why would we're supposed to be working smarter, not harder. And if you have a whole parent, and I'm saying this a lot of times to women, you have a whole dad that wants to step up and be a dad, don't make it difficult for them to.
Right. Absolutely.
Because there are people that are begging for anybody to show up. So if you have someone that, and I get it, every situation isn't ideal.
Right.
But if the bottom line is if they're stepping up and they're trying to be a dad, try to make that happen, because it's helping you.
Yeah.
Nothing better than being able to say, "Hey, I need backup." Like, I tell people all the time, like the greatest joy that I have is when there's a situation going on at Roman school, and I'm pretty sure women have this, where other men talk to us like we're small, and they don't want to listen to us because they feel like we're nagging moms. The level of joy I have when I can call Roman's dad and be like, "Hey, I need you to call the school and talk to this man, because I don't even have to explain. He knows when the phone call comes, he knows what his job is, and he hops to it. And then I'm usually on three-way with the phone on mute, like, and then he'll hang up and he'll be like, let me guess, he didn't act that way when you called. You know he didn't act that way when I called. That's why I called you." Like, that is the best joy in the world, to be able to, dad, I need dad duties, please. And I'm quiet. I just let him, because the response sometimes is completely different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, handle it. Go ahead, please. Love it if you do that.
So let you have some peace. I'm with you. I feel you on
Yeah.
that. I feel you on that. Now, you mentioned Reiki,
Yes.
which is healing energy.
Yes.
Okay, number one, what made you decide to look into Reiki and choose Reiki? And then how did it help?
So I was just, I'm gonna try everything. Try it all. But I remember specifically for myself, there was this period in my life where I had terrible insomnia, and I was awake for like 4 days straight, and I could not go to sleep. I don't know what was wrong. I don't know what was happening. I just couldn't go to sleep. And so at the time, a coworker of mine was a Reiki practitioner. Was just like, let me do a Reiki session on you. And I was like, okay. I don't even know if it was a full 10 minutes, but I was asleep. I was out. Like, I felt terrible. I woke up, it was like a pool of drool on the pillow. I was like, hey, sorry, my bad. And it made me feel better. And so, that fast forward years later, Roman was having issues. He wasn't, like, he never had a sleep cycle. It was terrible. And at that point, the one thing that stood out was I remember a psychiatrist that we had saw said to us that the reason that his behaviors are the way that they are sometimes is because there is a credible amount of energy that it takes to self-regulate and to, you know, keep his body in this space of what we decide is normal and not stemming and all these things that he does very well in school and out in public. And so when he gets home, he has to let that energy out some way. And so when he just started talking about the level of energy that it takes for him to do these things and self-regulate, like the light bulb went off and it was just like, maybe I should try Reiki, because all of that is energy-based healing. And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. I was just that mom. I was like, well, if it's a possibility, it might work. It can't hurt him. And my thing was, before I go the drug route, which will have all of these side effects, which is going to affect him medically. I don't know how it's going to affect him. He may not be able to communicate how it's affecting him. Like, I'm terrible with medications. If it's 12 side effects, I got 11.9 of them. So I'm thinking about him like, well, you know, you see like the side effects medication like might cause death. And, you know, like, I mean, like they give you this long list of side effects. So I was like, well, it's energy healing. It can't hurt him. So why not? So we did.
That's wonderful.
So for the rest of the parents out there, we keep pushing it and we give a discount with our partner, House of Healing Light. Take your Kundalini Reiki class. So
I mean, and just, you know, just for people that are skeptical, Johns Hopkins offers alternative medicine courses where you can go to Johns Hopkins and get Reiki treatments. So I know there are some people that are just like, you know, if like an actual medical facility doesn't say it, then they don't subscribe to it. But, you know, when medical facilities are offering it as alternative medicine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes, the hospitals are doing it, different hospitals, as well as there are studies now from universities that have proven, it works. So once again, parents, come on, get the discount, learn, become a Kundalini Reiki master yourself. So that way you don't have to pay anybody after that. But the main thing,
it also helps you.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
You can heal yourself.
Yes, it helps you to heal you, as well as to heal your children in as many ways as possible. And our children are attuned Kundalini Reiki masters themselves. So they can use it on themselves, which will help all of us in the long run, because the more they can use it on themselves, the more they can bring down their tantrums, bring down these other situations that happen, because they know, okay, let me just get myself some Reiki real quick. Let me bring this down. Okay, I'm feeling it coming. So let me go ahead and ask to go to the bathroom real quick. Give myself 3 minutes, and that hopefully that'll bring me down. So, you know, we have to arm our children with things that, like you said, especially don't have side effects. And then things that they can walk around and do it whenever they feel something coming. It's just one of the best tools that we can put in our toolbox.
And they can help the parents too.
Oh yeah.
Our children give me Reiki all the time.
Definitely. Tell them that your arm hurts, and they'll be like, oh, okay. Come over here, Dad. Oh.
Yeah.
Reiki on. So it's just a great benefit for everyone. How did it help Roman? I mean, what changes did you see in Roman?
I think it definitely helped his ability to self-regulate when he was going through meltdowns. We also, I built him a sensory room. And so basically we took his bedroom and padded the walls, and I crocheted like weighted blankets and panels and put them on the walls. I attuned paneling and blankets to help him sleep, which is funny because some days he, like when he wouldn't want to go to sleep, he would throw his blanket off. So I gave him a space. And so when it got to the point eventually where I could always just look at him and tell. Roman he has a certain vocalization, like a certain sound he makes, and depending on the tone of it, I could always tell like where he was going. And so there are moments where like I would ask him to count backwards, and that's how I could tell like when he was coming out of it. And then it just got to the point where he would ask to go to the room, and he would go and he would sit on the floor. He would do deep breathing. I did meditating with him, all of these things, just because I tried to give him these tools that, like you said, that he could use himself.
Right. Definitely.
And it's always tricky with him because I couldn't. It would always be moments where I wasn't quite sure if he understood concepts or how much of it he was getting, just because of that communication piece. But I could tell he felt different. I could watch him like getting ready to go over. Like we used to laugh because his brother called him Bruce Banner because they always said like he would go from 0 to 100, like he could turn into Incredible Hulk. And so I had like this thing where I could tell like if he didn't go over the edge almost, I could kind of reel him in and pull him back. And so it would be like, deep breath, come on, breathe with me, count with me. And there are some days where it was just too much. It was too much for him. And he would go. And I would just have to let him bang it out in the room. He would kick the walls and then he would calm down. But it got to the point where he could do that on his own. Like we didn't have to restrain him. And so, that was one of the things I always stressed to his dad is like, when he's out in public, you're not going to be there. You know how to restrain him with love. The world doesn't know how to do that. Right. He has to learn how to self-regulate. He has to learn how to go into a space safely or be able to isolate himself until he can bring himself back, whatever it is he's going through. It could be sensory issue. He could physically be in pain, whatever it is. He has to manage and master that himself without our help. Right. And so he got really good. He's really great at it now. Like there are very few instances, even at school, where like he doesn't get. I can't remember the last time they had to restrain him. Even when he comes home, like we don't have to physically hold him anymore to do that. He literally, whether it's him taking deep breaths, him sitting on the floor in a space by himself, he can ask for breaks. He's got that piece down, and he does it. Like he knows when he needs a break, and I don't have to intervene at all for the most part. Like he handles it himself. And so it definitely, you can see the difference. Like, and then the thing is, by him being in school and him monitoring his behaviors and them having charts, you physically see, okay, this time last year, he had this many instances where he was restrained, or, this month he had to have emergency medication this many times versus none this month. So like there's actual data to show that those self-regulating skills are there. Like he's able to do it without our assistance. So, and I definitely, I attribute it to all of it, to him, me doing Reiki on him and with him, meditating, all of those things, because he's that self-regulation alone requires so much energy, and it's draining and it's tiring, and just for him to navigate in the world, with all of that sensory input and all those things, it's a lot. So I'm really proud of him. He does really, really well, and it's been really beneficial for him.
So to all the parents out there, we have alternative ways that don't involve medicine. Now, we're not saying that if that's what it takes. That's what it takes. I understand. We're not medical doctors, so please don't take it that way. But we're just saying, if you throw these other alternatives into the mix, you can see changes in your child. Because as Nikki has just said, the main thing that we have to worry about is what are they going to do when we are not around. And that's one of the reasons why we attuned our children, and we attuned them at 8. So Mikhail has been attuned for 2 years, and Nasir for almost a year. Almost a year. So you say, well, why would you do that? Well, the earlier they start, the more they get used to it, they learn how to regulate it, then it just becomes, what's the phrase?
Second nature.
Second nature thing. Then it just becomes second nature, but they're armed with something that can constantly grow with them, that they can constantly use on themselves, whether we're there or not. And so it just makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Because like Nikki is just saying, when you got the proof, when you can look back from last year and you got the medical documentation that says your child is doing way better now than they were last year, and they've gotten the self-regulation down. Like I said, they begin to learn their triggers, and now they got something to use when they feel it. Because I'm gonna tell you something. One of the things that I learned from my children that God allowed me to understand, a lot of times as parents, we get caught up in our situation, how we feel. But God made me reflect and said, well, if you feel that, what do you think they're feeling? What do you think they're going through? It was talking to Nikki one time where she helped me to understand they are feeling pain like we are. But the pain of causing pain to us, to grandparents, when they feel the trigger's been triggered, and it's like, oh no, but they can't stop it. Mentally, they take that on.
Our 6-year-old daughter will say all the time, I can't control my emotions.
Absolutely.
And she's upset, not just because she's upset, but she's also upset that she can't regulate herself.
Absolutely.
And she wants to do better,
And so we just constantly want to tell parents, look, this is just something that you can use, that they can help themselves and you. Because Lord knows, Reiki helps keep things calm, tanks down anxiety. I mean, come on now. We know on a daily basis, we can go from 0 to 100 at any given moment. Just based on whatever we come home to sometimes. Like, what the?
I tell people it's just, you can never have too many tools in the toolbox.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not harmful. What's the, try it, and if it works, great.
Right. I mean,
if for some reason it doesn't, I don't know why it wouldn't, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. And that, like you said, that was the part with Roman that it was so difficult, because whenever he would have a meltdown, and literally, like, I mean, it's just, there were times that they were just blows coming at me, and whenever he would get in this space, there's this melody that he would hum, and when he was coming out of it, and it was the most remorseful, heart-wrenching thing that I ever heard. Like, it would make me cry, because I knew he was sorry, because he then had to look at the aftermath of what that was. Right. And I couldn't imagine what that was like for him, knowing, okay, I just hurt mommy, or I just broke this, or I just did this. And he might not even remember it when he was in it. But now that it's over, he sees that. And so it was, if this is going to help him, like, regain some of that control of himself, why would I not?
Right.
And the look on his face those days where it didn't kick over and he was able to calm himself down, and I would be like, yes, that's my guy, you did it. He would be so excited, like, oh my gosh, I'm okay. Everybody's okay. Like, I didn't, there were days when he
Right.
would put me out the room, like, no. And I'm like, do you want to take your, and because we didn't stop giving him medicine because he still had his emergency meds just in case. And I would ask him, and I always gave him the choice. And I would say, are you ready for your medicine? And he could sign, and he would look at me and go, no. And I wouldn't, I would hold off. And when he would bring himself down, like, you could see the joy in his face. Like, I did it. Okay. Woo. Like, and if you can give that to them, like, why would you not?
Right.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, because that not only works for them, but it works for us too. Works for us too. I mean, we're elated, but we're also like, whew, dodged another one.
Yeah.
That's real. I'm just saying. If you could go back and talk to yourself, what would you say to yourself?
Your past self.
Your past self, I'm sorry. Your past self. What would you say? Now that you've gained all of this knowledge, what would you say to yourself?
I would tell myself to stay the mission God is engineering.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I would tell myself, stay the mission God is engineering.
I love that.
There you go.
It's not going to make sense now because you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Stay the mission. It will all make sense. You are not going to break. That's what I would tell myself. You're not going to break.
That's wonderful.
That's what I'm talking about. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
And to end the conversation, to close out, what would be the main thing that you would want all of us as parents dealing with children on the autistic spectrum, autism spectrum, excuse me, what would be the thing that you would want us all walking away knowing?
I've been thinking about this question for a few weeks now, just so you know. I think what we have to remember as parents is our version of happy is not necessarily our children's version of happy.
Mm.
So there were times where, I would look at Rome and I would be like, out of my sons, that probably was my football player. That was the tough one. Like, is he going to go to prom? Is he going to, you know what I mean? Like all these different things. And, I want him to have this life and that. And not even just, kids on the autism spectrum, like just our kids in general. But especially, our kids with different needs, like the things that make us happy, they could care less about. Like Roman, literally, he still wears a uniform at school and he loves it because he doesn't have to think about what he's going to put on. It's the same, it's routine.
Right.
Like he don't care about any of that. His happy is watching these same 15 movies on their iPad over and over and over again. And that is his joy.
Right.
So I think as parents, we have to get out of this mindset of what happy looks like and what it should be. And that as long as our kids are happy, whatever their version of happy is, if they're not hurting anybody, then it is okay, whatever it looks like. Definitely that. And I think the other thing too is not trying to change our children. Because I think a lot of times we want our kids to fit in and, like Roman stems and he flaps. And a lot of people are just like, how do I get my kids to stop doing that? And don't. I think the key is changing spaces and environments so that everyone is welcome and our kids will automatically fit in. I think if we were more welcoming of things that are different and not this idea of what we decided was normal. I have no desire to make Roman fit in what the world and what people have decided is normal. No, Roman is going to show up being 100% Roman. My job as his mom is to make sure every space that he steps in is a safe space. So I think just, not trying to change our kids, not trying to make them look like everybody else or act and respond like, nah, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to change you. We're going to change this space so that when you show up 100% yourself, you're welcome. So I think
social norms don't have to be everyone else's so-called social norms.
And it kind of,
I can tell you, like, there's a lot of social norms I don't fit in, and and Roman is the one who was like, nah, this is the version of me you're getting, and if I'm not welcome, then I guess I can't come. It's okay.
Right.
Well, it kind of reminds me of one of the things that I was trying to teach people, and that is we have to let our children teach us. Mm-hmm. And that's on the website. That was something I learned early on. You have to let them teach you how to teach them, because there were things that were happening. I like to tell this story. Nikhil used to jump off the bed all the time, and I'd be like, "Stop, boy! You're gonna hurt yourself. Stop jumping off the bed. What's wrong with you?" And then God had to take me aside and be like, "Look, let me holler at you for a second. Okay, let me let you think about this for a minute. Has Nikhil hurt himself? No. So what do you think his truth is? His truth is, Dad, what you worried about? I done done this 1,000 times. It ain't hurt myself, not even a lick. Mm-hmm. So, nah, Dad, I'm good. Yeah. And that's what God had me to understand. They live their truth. Right. And it's just our job to understand that truth, to work with it, because we do have to help them to regulate it so that they don't hurt themselves or hurt anybody else. Mm-hmm. But their truth is their truth, and that's what they automatically do. They're going to do it anyway. Nasir's going to spin 100 times in 2 seconds
and not get dizzy.
That's just him. That's what he do, and like you said, that's what brings him joy. Just to be able to spin around.
I tell people all the time, the level of freedom that I have and being who I am, enjoying the things that I enjoy, I 100% owe to Roman. Because the things that Roman likes, he doesn't apologize for them. You're not going to make him feel bad about it. He don't care how you feel about the things that he likes. It doesn't matter at all. I used to tell Nick all the time, I was like, I wish some of that would rub off on you, because right now you care a little too much about like what other people think.
Right.
And so I look at him like there's never a day that he feels sorry for himself at all. Like this is what he likes. Like I like chocolate cake. I don't like vanilla cake. And you're not going to guilt him into liking it. He's not going to say he likes it so he don't hurt your feelings. Like none of that applies. And I'm just like, okay, I definitely need a lesson in this freedom. And I did. And I've learned so much from him. It's because it's so simple. It's just like, yeah, nah, I don't like it. Smile and walk away like, oh no, I'm good. And it's like, yeah, we're sitting here like, well, I don't want to say I don't like it because their feelings gonna be hurt, and if I don't show up, I don't want to. I'm tired. I'm not going. Like, okay, no, I'm in bed. Sorry. I do. I take my lead from him some days. I'm like, if he out here living life like that, let's try a little bit of that.
I tell James all the time, Nasir is living his best life. Yeah. He is happy.
Don't care what nobody on social media do. Like, none of that matters. He's like, well, you guys can go swim. I'm gonna sit here on the side of the pool. Whatever. And I'm like, he's just, he's living his best life, free, doing what he wants to do, and I'm proud of him. So, okay.
And as
Let me
long
keep
as
going.
he's constantly growing and turning into the big man that he's turning into, it's all good. You know, like I said, only thing we try to do is just make sure he's safe. But other than that, let him live his best life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's one of the things that this world needs. Like you said, we get so caught up in so-called social norms that most of us are not ourselves at all. You know, you decided to be a lawyer because you wanted money and you wanted prestige, but the gifts and talents that God gave you is always over here somewhere.
Right.
But you won't even visit that side.
Mm-hmm.
But you stay stressed out, keep that big hole in yourself to stay being a lawyer. So, you know, they're, like you said, they are free and happy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you look at them and I think you might get a little jealous every now and again. Man, I wish I could just be that free like that. It'd just be nice. Because I'll say this and then we'll close out. I definitely admire the fact that they don't care who you are, what your title is. If they got something to say, it's gonna be said. Let the chips fall where they may.
Yep.
Now,
Rome
of
is
course,
looking like, if you don't have a Wi-Fi password, I don't care who you are. Like, you're not helping me right now. You got the password or not? No, next. Who else do I need to talk to?
But like you said, they're just free.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close out?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to get into the business part. I guess we might have to do a second interview.
Just to talk about all of the things that you do. I mean,
right, to get into the crocheting and the especially since I've seen some of your crocheting. It's like, how did you get that picture in the crochet? How does that even work? I was trying to figure that out. So if you don't mind, hopefully we can do a part 2 where we can talk about your business. Because I one of the things I meant, it's like it came to mind, but then we started talking and we went into a different direction. But I definitely wanted you to be able to tell other parents your story of how you were able to do this and take care of Roman and hold down a regular job, especially being a dispatcher. I was like, how? How did you make all that work?
Yeah.
You know, so we definitely want to, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. You know what? And I think that that'll be perfect, because then the sensory kit part will be up and running. I'm working on sensory kits, like holiday themed sensory kits, and not just holiday, but just like themed sensory kits for families, and hopefully like fire departments, recreational centers, and things like that. So that'll be great, because then that little bit will be up and running, and I can kind of
just let us know. Just let us know when you're ready, because we would love to do that, because that was one of the things I wanted to do, is I wanted to showcase, like I said, there's a lot of single mothers out there. I wanted to showcase single mothers dealing with their children on the spectrum, but still doing their own thing. And how can they do it? Because it's a lot of people that are creative, but just don't know what they can do. And some don't feel like they can do it because my child's on the spectrum, so I can't do this, can't do that. So I definitely wanted them to see all the stuff that you've done.
It can be
and
done.
Be like, oh, okay, all right, I think I can do it. I can handle this.
And dads too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it can be done. Trust me, because there were days I didn't think it could be. God would be like, check this out. Just when you thought you wasn't gonna do something.
Here you go.
Those are the best moments, when you say you're not gonna do something, and God be like, okay. I'll be like,
are you sure about that? Right. Let me show you a little something.
That's the story of my life.
Click on that right there.
I'll be like, gotcha. I'll be like, you're right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we thank you for coming on. It has definitely been an evening full of information, inspiration, And we definitely are looking forward to part 2, especially since we're going to be showcasing the business part and some new things that you're coming out with.
Yeah.
And we just want to say to the audience, we thank you for listening. We hope you walk away with as many tips as Nikki was able to provide us with. And just always remember, learn the principle, tweak it to yourself in your situations. And you can use all this information and better your life, and especially better your child's life.
Yes.
So with that, we all say peace.
Peace.
Good. Roman does that when we get off calls. He goes, peace out.
Peace, everybody. We thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. And we thank you for tuning in and giving us your time and energy for changing life on the spectrum. If you would like to leave us an email because there's something you want to see on the show or any information that you may need or want to request, go to changinglifeonthespectrum@gmail.com and just drop us an email. And if you want to support the show, we ask you to support the nonprofit that brings you the show, which is McKeel's Path for Autistic Triumph, by going to www.mpfat.org and hitting that donate button so that we can continue to help our families dealing with autism, and we can continue to help them by changing life on the spectrum. Thank you and peace.